738 Talk Radio 790 KABC. So we continue our coverage of the controversy over the proposed development of the Millennium Towers in Hollywood, the Millennium Hollywood project, faulty towers, if you will. 13-0, the city council approved this project, but opponents are saying that the city knew in advance that the California Geological Survey told them that there was an active earthquake fault right where they want to build these buildings. There was a press conference yesterday. Talking to us right now is the attorney representing the neighborhood groups against the Millennium Project. We've spoken to him before. Welcome back, Robert Silverstein. Good morning, Mr. Silverstein.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So the developers are saying these emails that you talked about yesterday, no big deal. Tell us what's in the email and tell us why it's a big deal.
Well, of course, the developers are going to say it's no big deal. They're in full denial mode. We obtained secret emails that had never been seen before. We got them under the Public Records Act, so I had to basically pry them out of the city. And they show secret discussions between the developer's attorneys, and city staff admitting that the California State Geologic Survey's 2010 active fault map showed a fault running across their property, number one, and also discussing the dangers and the risks of that. And none of that material mysteriously wound up in the environmental impact report or the public record.
Now, who did this? I mean, this is always the mystery. You know, we cover constant stories in L.A., and one of the constants, I meant to say, one of the constant factors in L.A. stories is that no one is ever held accountable for this. I'm assuming this didn't happen by accident.
No, it clearly didn't happen by accident. We now know that the city and the developers knew 7 months before the environmental impact report was released to the public. We don't know how high up this misconduct goes, but we intend to follow the paper trail all the way to the top, whether that is Councilman Mitch O'Farrell, Mayor Eric Garcetti, or both, because don't forget, Garcetti up until a month ago was the councilman for Hollywood. So, you know, a mid-level bureaucrat is not going to stick his neck out and lie for a developer like this. It has to come from above, and we intend to follow this trail wherever it leads.
We're talking with Robert Silverstein, who is the attorney representing the neighborhood groups against the Millennium Project. We had the state geologist on, the head of the geology department, on the other day to talk about this, and he did confirm that they have known that there's a fault there, and it's been on the maps for a couple of years anyway, certainly long enough for people to have recognized that this issue was there. We had John Parrish is his name, Dr. John Parrish. Yeah. The head geologist. You know, the developers responded, I guess, by shrinking the size of the buildings in terms of the number of stories, but not actually the physical mass of them. It's the same square footage. It's just wider rather than taller.
Correct.
At what size would these buildings be acceptable?
Well, under state law, you cannot build a building, especially not a high-rise, on top of an earthquake fault. So the buildings would have to be set back at least 50 feet on either side of the earthquake fault. So there needs to be proper testing by a neutral panel that goes in, a neutral panel of experts that we can trust, that the public can trust, to determine the precise location. Then, under state law, 50 feet on either side is measured off. Then you can determine what's a buildable area. But right now, the critical problem that we have is that the city and the developer are completely untrustworthy. They have demonstrated over and over that they will lie and they will cheat. And any further seismic testing that they're responsible for will have absolutely no value. So I have been demanding on behalf of the public and the community groups that I represent that a neutral panel of seismic experts, untainted by the developer or by the city of L.A., be appointed or be put in place, and that should include the gentleman that you just mentioned from the state of California, Dr. Parrish. Let them establish the proper protocol for testing and determine exactly where that fault is. But right now, the city continues to be in cover-up mode, saying that they trust the city geologist. I can tell you that the city geologist was in on all of this cover-up and suppression of information, and the public deserves way better from Councilman Mitch O'Farrell and from Mayor Eric Garcetti.
All right. Well, we will reach out to both Mitch O'Farrell and to Mayor Garcetti, as well as the developers, to have them give their side of the story. We'll continue the conversation. Mr. Silverstein, thanks for coming on with us. Appreciate it. Robert Silverstein. 800-222-KABC is our number. We've got Tim who wants to weigh in on this. He thinks it's overblown, the earthquake fault risk. We'll take that call, and we take your calls, too, if you want to join us. This is McIntyre in the Morning, Talk Radio 790 KABC.
Listen to McIntyre in the Morning anywhere with the iHeartRadio app. 790 KABC, an iHeart radio station.
748 Talk Radio 790 KABC. Doug and T-Ray with you until 9 o'clock this morning. So, this Millennium Project controversy, I don't know. I certainly believe that if the city has rules, they've got rules that everybody has to follow, including the geology reports and the environmental impact reports, and they left something out, then you want to know how did that happen and who did it and why. And if there's nefarious cheating going on and rule bending on, we should be able to find out who did it, and there should be consequences. On the other hand, this place is crisscrossed with earthquake faults. I mean, almost any place you put a shovel in the ground, you could have. And does it really make that much difference if the building is 50 feet that way from an earthquake? And we saw when the Northridge earthquake took place, it knocked buildings down in Santa Monica.
Right.
So, the Capitol Records building is right there. Are they going to evacuate that? So, I don't know. It seems to me like I certainly believe you have to have a single standard for the application of laws. And that's what drives people mad, is that we have exemptions for some people. Some people are protected class either because of money or because of political clout, and that includes the illegal alien population that has more representation, seemingly, than a homeowner or a small business owner. But I also think that, this is the kind of stuff that we use as fear-mongering to just kill projects, and that makes L.A. a business-unfriendly city. Tim is on the freeway. Tim, how are you?
Morning. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for calling.
The thing I do for a living is architecture. So I've been building and land development for 26 years now. I can honestly say that the thing that they're looking for in the EIR, the Environmental Impact Report, has nothing to do with seismic. Has nothing to do with where the fault is. You have to look in the geological report that would have been made specific for every single site.
Well, I think that's what they're saying. They're saying that the geology report says that the earthquake fault is there, but it didn't end up in any of the paperwork that went to the council when the decision was made.
Well, typically what the council sees is a pretty picture. It sees an elevation, a plan. It might ask for a traffic report. But as you said, everywhere in LA there's a fault. There's something under the ground that's not going to be stable.
Well, let me ask you, as an architect, what is the risk to put large buildings that close to an earthquake fault?
Well, look at downtown LA. There's 150 buildings over 10 stories down there.
Yeah, well, that's
these risks are all known. They're all mitigated somehow with your foundations, with the way you build your building. So it's already there. It's already done.
Yeah, well, I would imagine that some of the subway lines that we're building, including some of the subterraneans, the tunnels go through earthquake faults.
Right. I know dozens of engineers, and the first time that they said they're going to put a subway in LA, they laughed. Like, what are you thinking?
All right. Well, thanks for the call, Tim. Appreciate it.
All right.
That's again, my concern. I guess I'm a fatalist about this. I've lived here long enough that I just accept that earthquakes are pretty much what we do. And if an earthquake gets me, it's going to get me. I mean, you avoid obvious risks, like maybe hanging that mirror over the bed is not the best idea. Of course, at my age, it's a terrible idea for aesthetic reasons. Besides shards of glass. But nonetheless, especially with that little warning, objects in mirror are smaller than they appear. But nonetheless, what bothers me about this is the idea that, once the money avalanche starts rolling down the mountain, all of a sudden environmental impact reports and all that stuff that they'll kill you with don't apply to the big guys. It's like, that Farmers Field, the football stadium proposal for downtown L.A. Once the big money got involved, all of a sudden, screw the environment, pave the whales. We don't care, man. We're putting this stadium downtown whether you people like it or not.
Pave it. Bark on it.
Exactly. And the Millennium Project is a giant project with a lot of money. Whereas, again, putting a few condominiums on the site of the old Fire Station 83 in Encino in the middle of a residential neighborhood where there are condominiums and houses. Oh, we can't have that, says Paul Koretz. That's the last thing we want to see. Our homes being built in the middle of a residential neighborhood. But giant towers, earthquake, approved. It's 7:53, Talk Radio 790 KABC.